has a heart-to-heart with Meemaw after some really good bacon and eggs. Chapter 16. Meemaw would never have agreed to it, but I had to make sure the manatee's body was still there. I crossed my fingers on both hands when I told her I was going over to my friend Lenny's house, knowing I'd never said anything about Lenny visiting his grandparents. Do you remember that? Where did Lenny go? Well, good, Skeet, she said. That'll keep your mind off this business with Dan. I was washing the frying pan and the dishes too, without even being asked, and Meemaw shot me a probing look. I don't need to call Lenny's Mama, do I? No, ma'am, I said as innocently as I could. Instead, I was thinking, please, no. I wouldn't be thinking you'd be doing anything foolish, would you? Absolutely not, I assured her. I felt like a first-class creep. But I told myself it wasn't foolish to check on the manatee. It was plain common sense. Oh, Skeet was telling Meemaw a lie. To change the subject, I said, I'll be home by 5. That's when Mom said she'd get out of work. All right, Meemaw said. Then we'll get to the bottom of this mess. I sure hope so. Meanwhile, I'd make certain that nothing happened to the evidence in case we needed it. I told myself again that there was no need for Meemaw to know. It would only give her something to worry about. When I got to the marina, I looked first to see if Dirty Dan's boat was in its slip, and it was. Either he'd already gone out, dumped the manatee, and returned, or the evidence was safe. Blink and Blinky came running over as I headed down the dock to my skiff. Blink's hand reached for the quarter, and we played our game. So, what's Dirty Dan up to today? I asked casually. A shadow passed over Blink's normally sunny face, his forehead wrinkled with worry, and his eyes started blinking like mad. He glanced back over his shoulder towards the little camper. Uh-oh, he said. Uh-oh. Dirty Dan said, watch out for Skeet. Be careful if Skeet asks questions. That's what Dirty Dan said. Be careful. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Was I careful, Skeet? You were real careful, Blink, I said quickly. I told Dirty Dan I could keep quiet, Blink said anxiously. I told him I could stay quiet in the boat. I was quiet in the boat. Wasn't I, Skeet? Sure, Blink, I said, having no idea what he was talking about, well, wanting to reassure him. Don't worry. Look, Blinky wants to play. You'd better go throw a ball for Blinky now, okay? I'll go throw a ball for Blinky. Okay, Skeet. Good, I said, edging away. Don't worry, Dirty Dan isn't gonna know. And not wanting Dirty Dan to look out and see Blink talking to me. You were real careful, Blink, I called back. Real quiet. Don't worry. I got into my skiff and yanked angrily on the cord to start the motor. Nothing happened. I yanked 4 or 5 more times and I realized the choke was out. The motor flooded and stalled. I took a deep breath and tried to settle down. Poor Blink. Dan was trying to keep him from talking to me, and I'd gotten him all frightened and confused. Blink would be better off in some sort of facility, I thought furiously, where he'd be safe from Dirty Dan. Do you believe that? Would Blink be safe from Dirty Dan? Does he need to be safe? We'll find out. The engine finally started and I headed down the river, forcing myself to control my speed through the refuge area, wishing I were old enough or brave enough to go rescue Blink. Right then and there. As it was, I had to content myself with hoping that something would be done soon. At least I could make sure we still had the evidence we needed to finish this once and for all. When I got to the backcountry channels, I was glad to see the tide was still high enough for my boat to maneuver. I found the first blue rope marker and followed it to the next marker, and the next, and soon I saw a lone vulture circling in the sky overhead and came to the open stretch of water where the other vultures were gathered to feed. I approached slowly, and they seemed more reluctant than ever to leave their feast. I drew quite close before they rose to make an awkward escape. Little was left of the carcass. That was the word that came to my mind when I saw it this time. Not manatee, or even body, but carcass. There was enough to tell that it had once been a manatee. Enough, no doubt, for an expert to identify the hole in its skull was a bullet wound. Enough to nail Dirty Dan. I was thinking all of this when suddenly a noise made its way to my consciousness, causing my heart to lurch. I sat up straight, my full attention focused on the sound. Different from the buzzing of the flies, it was a low, steady humming. a boat engine, maybe a quarter mile away, but coming closer. I strained to listen, and yes, it was definitely coming closer, which meant I had left the main river. It had left the main river and was coming into the backcountry, coming steadily closer, not hesitating, not changing direction, and not stopping to fish. Coming steadily through the maze of channels directly toward where I sat. It had to be a small skiff like mine, or a flats boat, something that didn't draw a lot of water. It was someone who knew exactly where he was going. I sat there paralyzed, hypnotized by the steady humming sound of the glare of the sun on the water and the moist heat that threatened to suffocate me. It didn't matter. There was nowhere to go. I was trapped by the far end of the little backcountry channel like a crab in a bait tank. I forced myself out of my panicked stupor and tried to think, and the first thought I had was a bad one. I had no radio. The second thought was worse. Meemaw thought I was at Lenny's. She didn't expect me to be home until 5. No one knew where I was. No one, I realized as the boat appeared around the bend, except Dirty Dan. This is very dangerous. This is why we don't lie about where we're going. If something were to happen to Skeet, he doesn't have a radio. It sounds like it's still early morning. He could have been missing for a long time before anyone even thought to come looking for him. So, who did Skeeter lie to? And what do you think about the manatee not being a manatee anymore? What does he call it?